Hello. Good morning, everyone. We're going to try it again. Good morning, everyone. Okay. Now we can start the event. Thank you for being here. I have my lovely Anna here with me. We've been working extremely hard the past few months to make this event an amazing experience for everyone. So I would like to start by thanking the team that put a lot of effort, and I'm sure you're going to have a fantastic experience. That's it. Anna, a few words. I'm Lihi. This is Anna. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe just some housekeeping. Fire exit. If you hear the alarm, there's no planned alarm for today. So if you hear an alarm, please exit through the doors here, and we will meet across the road on Exhibition Road. Yeah, I think that's all.
A lot of emergency managers here today, so let's see how you work in action.
Exactly, together. Okay.
Okay, so we are ready to start. We welcome Washington and Avi to give a few words. Where's Washington? Here he is.
Mic's up already.
You mic, perfect.
Thanks, Lihi. Thanks very much, Lihi and Anna. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you, some of you, back to Imperial, following our inaugural R2P, we called it, conference last year. And for those who are coming for the first time, a very, very warm welcome as well. So Imperial has a president who is the CEO of the university, Professor Hugh Brady. We also have a provost who is in charge of day-to-day academic affairs in Professor Ian Wormsley. And last but not least, we have the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, to which I belong, who is Professor Nigel Brandon. So on behalf of them, I'm extending a proper, humongous Imperial welcome to you all. So that's the point where you give me a clap, I mean. Yeah. As usual, I have a couple of slides, but before I do that, I'd also like to thank the team. Thanks very much, Lihi, Anna, Max, colleagues, Chris, looking after the program, Paul Williams, our president, Avi, our CEO, Udi. I mean, if I don't name you, just know that I'm including you in the team. It's been a huge effort on behalf of us all to get us to where we are today. Why? Because we are actually addressing a very important global issue here today. Our sponsors, again, thank you very much. So we have EEI, so that's Edison Electric Institute. We have the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, which is also the UK's National Environmental Research Council. That was supposed to be a joke. I'm not doing very well today. And then SNR, which is a non-profit organization. So thank you very, very much indeed for helping us in the way that you have. So as a professor and teacher, I always have a couple of slides. And let's see if that works. Okay, so what is Imperial about? Imperial is about science, but science defined in the widest sense for humanity. And we are anchored on those four pillars that you can see. And there's one common word there, which is society. So you see sustainable society, resilient society. Now, resilient is one of the pillars, but sitting next to smart, sustainable, and of course, as you can see there, a healthy society. And of course, they're not independent, they are interdependent. And then we throw in things in the middle, facilitators, enablers, such as AI, data science, and so on. So we also pride ourselves, not just on making practical impact, but that the fact that some other people look at it and give us rankings that you can see on that particular slide. Somebody has decided, I think, not to put us first. So if you look at that and you see that somebody's not putting us first, there's a problem there, isn't it? in the sense that people like me still have a job to try to get us to number one. But we're doing well as a university, as a global university addressing global challenges. So you will be wondering why that diagram is there and what the relevance, direct relevance is. It's about this slide, probably the most important slide I'll show you in my academic and research life, which is, I don't want to be apocalypse now. I'm not coming across as that, but I really want to say that the threats, what I call the threat vectors, you see them in that pentagonal picture, and also trying to map out the landscape, to try to figure out the connectivity between the threats themselves, direct, indirect. And what we are challenging actually is to move away from the silo culture, where people identify little things, claim expertise, but they don't connect them up. The world only benefits if all those things are connected, which means that we have to deal with a level of complexity that we have never dealt with before. But what we are saying as the R2S, as a conference, as the EIS Council, as Imperial, and our partners is that we really have to come together in a meaningful, tangible way to make step change, to save the planet. Some of these threats are existential. So actually, we are calling everybody to arms to be able to do this. So that's what I'd like to say, actually, as a welcome, but also effectively setting the scene, trying to explain why we are here with this slide, and also trying to say that we have already started as the partnership, and we are anchored and supported fully by Imperial College London through its 4 pillars, as we've mentioned. So without further ado, I'd like to invite a very special person. When I met him for the first time, I thought that I'd known him forever. But that tells you something about chemistry and how we work together and so on. So I'd like to invite forward Avi Schnur, who is the Chief Executive Officer of EIS Council, to also say a few words of welcome before inviting Paul, our new president, and then moving on to the keynote by Lord James. So welcome, Avi.
Chang. Is this working now? Yes. Oh, excellent. So thank you, Professor O. Chang. I have to agree with you. I think perhaps I have known you forever. We just need to redefine forever. So, but thank you so much. And in particular, let me thank once again the joint conference team, Imperial College London, EIS Council. It really has been a monumental effort, and I think, as we will all see over the next couple of days, to very good purpose. So let me start just a couple of slides. So as you can see, the council is not simply involved in partnering to put together conferences like this. We host as a catalytic process and a leadership process and engagement in developing planning policies to address extreme hazards. And we do that with a number of programs. On the next slide, as you'll see, a good example of such programs is the Genome Project, which we sometimes refer to as an advanced chaos management platform. It has a lot of unique qualities, which is too much to go into now, so I won't try. But let's simply focus on the fact that when we talk about potential global scale existential threats, one of the primary issues that we will confront is dealing with the chaos that will immediately appear. If you don't have a plan to deal with that chaos, you won't be able to even get started. So Genome is one of those projects. On the next slide, there's a very focused effort, which you will hear a bit more about today. If you can manage the chaos, the very first thing that has to happen, since inevitably in a really massive event, there will be big disruption in power grids, is to get those grids back on. So that process, Black Start, is remarkably involved. It begins with very aggressive policy engagement which is not necessarily broadly or well understood. This new handbook, which is coming out, Chris, within a couple of weeks, should be available on Amazon. Extensively peer-reviewed, including by some of those who are with us today, throughout the power industry and in the regulatory sector. So more about that a bit later. So let me just say a few remarks beyond this. And I'd like to begin with a story. So back in 2016, the United States was hit by Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey was remarkably powerful. It spawned dozens of tornadoes across the United States, and the core of the hurricane hit Texas, and the worst region that was hit in Texas was Houston. To give you a sense for the scale, there were more than 250,000 homes destroyed or damaged. There were more than 100 people who died. Now, in an event that massive and that sudden, it is far beyond what any emergency management agency is going to be able to handle. What that means is that people were stranded, in some cases standing on their rooftops. And if their cell phones were working, they were trying to reach 911, which is the US emergency number, and were not getting anyone. And the waters were rising. Now, many of the people who survived owe their lives to an organization of volunteers that came together. It's called the Cajun Navy. These were people who put their lives on hold, left their jobs. If they had boats, they hooked the boat on a trailer to their cars. In some cases, they drove 1,000 miles. Others who had skills with the internet, with media, who were putting up temporary sites for people to reach out to say, hey, I'm here. These people saved enormous number of lives, people who otherwise simply would not have made it. There was no plan for this. These were just people who said, look, I can't just sit here. I can't go to Starbucks and have a nice coffee. I have to get involved. I have to do something. Now, keep that story in mind. There are currently 8 billion of us sharing this planet. Now, what makes that possible is amazing technology. But that amazing technology only operates as it needs to operate to keep our civilization going if it is tightly, even organically interconnected. And it is. The problem is, when you have an organism, if you take any major organ out of that organism, it's not going to continue to function. It won't continue to operate. What that means is concomitant to our success in being able to reach the point that civilization has reached, we have a new vulnerability, a new fragility of the interconnected supply chains and infrastructures that keep us alive. Now, when you have a vulnerability and you have the list of hazards which have multiplied and become more complex that Washington, you spoke of a few minutes ago, you can project that something seriously bad will happen at some point. So here's the point of the Cajun Navy story. There is a challenge out there for each of us, and the challenge is greater than it was for these people who left their jobs and hooked their boats and trailers to their cars and drove 1,000 miles, because it hasn't happened yet. We have to be able to get involved and begin proactively taking action out of the box, beyond business as usual, before we have seen the disaster happen. So that's the challenge. I think it's doable. One of the main reasons for optimism is here we are. You know, there are many conferences that occur in London around the world, some of them focused on hazards. But as far as we know, This is the only conference that is focused on really extreme hazards in the context of actually getting started with specific near-term actions designed to do something about it and take these existential threats off the table. So as we go through the next couple of days, you will see there are opportunities. There are working groups that are being set up. Join them. The working groups are organized in a framework called the Human Continuity Project. Become a member. Get involved. There will be panels of experts who will be speaking, but these 2 days are designed to be very participatory. Make yourselves heard. Don't be an audience, be participants. So that's the challenge, because I think it will take all of us. It's really going to take all of humanity coming together and beginning to focus on this. It will take more than humanity. We will need help from above. But it's only we can work together that we will be able to reach the point where when some of these extremely bad things happen to our new tightly integrated world, we will be able to get past it, survive, thrive. So with that, Paul Williams, President, please, Paul.
Thank you, Abby. One of the things that you mentioned there is working groups, and it's what's going to set hopefully this conference apart from other conferences that you go to, which is there will be working groups that you can sign up for, which will pick up on key themes arising from this conference and take us through to next year's conference, where hopefully we'll provide updates on what those working groups have discovered, developed, and help us build this blueprint for the Human Continuity Project, as Avi outlined. For the panels, we set some framing questions for all of the panels. The framing questions are designed to have meaning and impact for you in the audience. You might be in a university lecture theatre, but this is not meant to be a series of lectures. It's meant to be an interactive discussion. We want you to be involved. That's why you're here. You all have knowledge that you can contribute to the various discussions. So please do get involved in those framing questions. Hopefully each of the panels will present their remarks, their content in a way then which is useful to you. One of the things I find most exciting about this conference is that we've got lots of old friends here. We've also got many new friends here. And the countries represented are quite extraordinary. I think we're not showing it on the map, but I think our furthest travelled attendee is from Australia. So we really do have particularly broad coverage. Thank you, Jill. We have particularly broad coverage across the globe, which is exactly what we need to develop human continuity in the way that we envisage in the context of our project. And then to promote that diversity, we have a broad representation of industries or sectors represented and participating as well, which we're particularly excited in. Human continuity as a concept, broader societal resilience is not going to happen unless we have a broad range of societies and sectors involved and represented. We have a diverse audience, and that's a really good thing. One of the challenges, though, with a diverse audience, and we discovered this when we were doing the panel preparations, is that we're going to talk about resilience a lot, and the definition of resilience can become quite a challenging topic. And if we asked all of you in the room to define resilience, we'd have as many different variations on that definition as there are people in the room. And we were acutely aware that we didn't want the panels, which are only 45 minutes in length, to fall down a rabbit hole of trying to define what they believe resilience will mean. I've worked on resilience topics now for a good few years, and there's an overarching definition of resilience I'd like to use as a working definition for the conference, and all of the other definitions I've heard all fall within this. Resilience is a deep topic, and there are many layers that you can add to this definition, but broadly speaking, resilience is the ability to absorb shocks, not contribute to them. And that is particularly important in drawing a distinction between risk management and the capabilities that you need to build resilience. So avoid the temptation to define what resilience means, use that working definition, and hopefully we'll have a very productive conference. Now, I mentioned we've got old friends and new friends. A great friend to the conference, to EIS Council. We are very privileged to have Lord James Arbuthnot. You may know James from some years ago when he was chair of the Defence Select Committee. You may also know James more recently for other initiatives which he's been particularly involved in. They're not so relevant to this conference, although perhaps they are in a leadership context. Anyway, I won't try and introduce James any further. James, thank you very much.
Good morning. As you can see, I've come in disguise today. I'm a member of the House of Lords, and I've had a very gloomy outlook on life for many, many years. Now, you may have seen our new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, in the Sunday Times cartoon yesterday, portrayed as Eeyore. Well, not meaning to try to steal a march, I got there long before him, and I was described as making Eeyore look like a happy clappy type about 25 years ago by the Times. But as Keir Starmer is discovering, gloom doesn't motivate people. We are motivated by joy and hope. So the next 2 days will be about joy and hope. And as Harvey says, getting something bloody done. Well, he didn't use bloody, but he meant it. I was persuaded many, many years ago, mostly by Harvey, whose influence and wisdom are both enormous, that the world is vulnerable in ways that governments do not fully appreciate. We rely on just-in-time networks. We rely on fragile technologies and on systems that are interconnected, but all too often under-considered, under-resourced, and under-exercised. While the size of the world's population is such that we need those interconnected networks, the nature of humankind is such that we don't like thinking about bad things that might happen to those networks. We find it particularly difficult to think about things that aren't visible, that things that are over the horizon rather than threats that are at the gate. And that is why, as Harvey says, the great repeat of the Carrington solar flare, which hasn't happened yet, is very difficult for our politicians to deal with. Now, Paul said that one of the things that I've been dealing with a lot of other things as well as the end of the world. So I've been working for the last 15 years on the post office as well as on resilience. For those of you from overseas, the UK Post Office is a much-loved, government-owned institution. It's been the focus of a scandal which has only recently come to the attention of the country, even though it's been going on for years. The Post Office introduced a new computerized accounting system called Horizon, which everyone knew at the time of its introduction had various glitches and bugs. Well, as you all know, all computer systems do have various glitches and bugs, which is one of the reasons our electric infrastructure is so vulnerable. Somehow, the Post Office forgot that key point and began to prosecute sub-postmasters at an alarming rate on the basis of faulty computer evidence for errors created by the system. This led to several suicides, hundreds of miscarriages of justice, hundreds of people sent to prison, and a cost of reparations that will run into more than £1 billion. It was an example of the way that humans can fail to think through our over-reliance on technology. A couple of years ago, I chaired a select committee in the House of Lords looking at risk management and risk planning. And we found that our systems in the UK were too secretive. Those running them were too defensive. The different levels of government did not communicate with each other, and those, nor with those for whom they were working and with whom they needed to work and whose skills they needed to tap into. And the ministers in charge were often ignorant of their own responsibilities. So, Paul, I was a little alarmed to see from your side that the number of people from government organizations here today is 1% of our attendance. That bothers me a bit. The Conservative government of the day issued a resilience framework, partly in response to my committee's report. And they based that on 3 core principles. First, a developed and shared understanding of the civil contingencies risks we face. That's good. Second, a greater emphasis on preparation and prevention rather than cure, but we've got to be able to bounce back from the shocks that Paul identified. And third, resilience being a whole of society endeavor. So we need more transparency, more trying to make everyone give a contribution. Harvey's story about Hurricane Harvey shows us the value of community to resilience. Since then, there has been a change of government, but not, I believe, a change of approach. One of the reasons for that, I think, is the excellent work done by Lord Harris, Toby Harris, who is, like me, one of the advisory board members of the Electric Infrastructure Security Council, but he's also chair of the Labour Party peers, and he's set up the National Preparedness Commission, which has done really some very scholarly and effective work in seminars, briefings and papers over the last couple of years. The Labour manifesto criticised the last government's framework for the absence of a whole of society approach to resilience. Well, that wasn't entirely fair, I thought. An inadequate focus on vulnerable and marginalized communities, that was fairer. Slow speed of adoption of key reforms, again, fairer. An inadequate risk management system, entirely fair. And the absence of focus on long-term and catastrophic risks, again, entirely fair. But the portfolio of resilience under the new Labour government has been given to Pat McFadden, a very senior, well-respected cabinet minister who glories in the title of Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. But the lessons that I would draw from both the Post Office scandal and the work we've all been doing on resilience are as follows. First, skills and knowledge. We need skills and knowledge of the risks that we face. The sun, the solar flare could do damage to our electricity system tomorrow, but very few people think about that. Of the solutions to some of those risks, form communities, work out how to deal with the issues of a lack of electricity. Of the knowledge, we need skills and knowledge of the limits of and the vulnerability to our communities, our computer systems. In the UK, extraordinarily, there is a legal presumption that computers work as they are meant to work. Bonkers. But that law exists, and I tried to move an amendment earlier on in the year about that legal presumption, and it was just about to go through when the election was called. So we've got to return to the charge. And as Paul Williams says, investment in resilience is a down payment on tomorrow. Second, skills, apart from skills and knowledge, Awareness of the human condition. Please don't place complete reliance on others, particularly if you're the boss. Don't, if you're the post office boss, rely entirely on lawyers and IT managers, because they will probably be relying on you. Don't please take the view that if something has horrendous consequences, it cannot therefore happen. That was what the post office did. Think through the consequences of everything that you're doing. Don't think you've caught all of the vulnerabilities to which you are subject, because you won't have done. You're a human being. Recognize the value of community. Recognize the dangers of groupthink. And think of the future. If you are the Chancellor of the Exchequer, don't spend all your money on schools and hospitals, because there are threats over the horizon. And finally, on these lessons and knowledge, there are plenty more of them, and we'll talk about them during the next couple of days. Leadership and challenge. Challenge yourself. Encourage others to challenge you. Don't think that challenge from somebody turns that somebody into an enemy. Challenge turns that somebody into a friend. And exercise, exercise, exercise. As Paul Stockton says, and it's wonderful to see you in the country, Paul, a plan not exercised is no plan at all. And finally, coming back to Eeyore for a moment, there is a value in being like Eeyore. I have lived with it for most of my life, but there is also a risk. People switch off if you're too gloomy. That's why we need to set out the solutions as well as the problems. Over the next 2 days, we'll be examining these solutions. We'll end up in a place, take it from me, we'll end up in a place of hope, positiveness, and work to be done. Don't forget, joy and hope.
One of the things I forgot to mention is we prepared a series of knowledge bites or videos. They're meant to smooth the transition between the various events and get the next panel the opportunity to take their seats. So I think we're going to play the first of those knowledge bites now, whilst I invite Washington and panel 1 to please come and take your seats.
A computer glitch at an air traffic control center in Virginia meant no air traffic over the nation's capital and resulted in hundreds of flights being canceled and thousands more delayed.
Past few years, our intelligence and cybersecurity agency have discovered that the CCP has hacked into American critical infrastructure for the sole purpose of disabling and destroying our critical infrastructure.
We live in a very new world where everything is interconnected, everything is interdependent, at exactly the same time as the hazards and the threats are multiplying.
people are still not believing that it will happen. So this is a major threat, because if you don't believe that it will happen, you actually are putting in wrong prioritizing, you don't deal about it, you don't think about it, and so on and so on.
So it's joy and hope. Thank you very much, Lord James. And welcome to the first panel. A couple of things to say in terms of how we're going to run it. I'm not very good at introducing, and therefore I'm going to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves as fully as possible as we start. I will then have a question that I will ask each of them to respond to. And then what I'd like to do is really engage you, the audience. So please be ready with your questions. And when you're asking your question, just your name and affiliation, and then we take it from there. I've got other questions, obviously, if you don't ask that, I'll ask, but I'd rather I didn't use them. So again, thank you, Lord James, for setting the scene. Obviously, we are facing challenges, but we're also here to work together to come up with solutions, hence the joy and hope. I'll continue using that forever from now on. So this question allows each of the panel members to start by introducing themselves and then attempting to answer. The question is, in your view, how are the threats of today different from those of yesterday? And how will they be different tomorrow? So it's about yesterday, today, and where we are heading tomorrow. So I will start with Dr. Wells.
Washington, thank you very much for that question, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor and privilege to be here. So I am Brian Wells, I'm NATO Chief Scientist, and in that role, I really have two functions. The first is the Senior Scientific Advisor to NATO headquarters, NATO leadership in Brussels, advising them on scientific trends, what the implications are for them as leading politicians in the world, and also a major military alliance. My second role is to chair the NATO Science and Technology Board, which is composed of the Science and Technology Defence Directors of the 32 allies, 32 now, and also of like-minded partner nations across the globe. We have a network of about 5,000 scientists across the globe who collaborate together to undertake research of direct relevance, both to their nations, but also the alliance as well. I'll add some words to this in my keynote later this afternoon. So that's really my role as NATO Chief Scientist. How do I see the threats changing from yesterday through to today and into tomorrow? First of all, I see military conflict not changing, but expanding. We see, well before the war in Ukraine, we see what we call technically sub-threshold actions that fall short of the yesterday of battle, of kinetic attack. We see cyber attacks, we see disinformation, we see other sub-threshold attacks, and who would have thought that 2.5 years ago we would see tanks rolling across the plains of Europe? That's why I say that the nature of military conflict isn't just changing, it's expanding. As a Western society, we need to defend not only against the threats of yesterday, we need to defend against the changed threats now and anticipate what the threats will be in the future. How does NATO do that? One of the products from the NATO Science and Technology Organization is our Science and Technology Trends, a biannual publication which looks 20 years ahead. How is science going to be in 2045? That's our next publication. And what are the military implications of that, both for NATO civilian leadership, leading ambassadors and international figures, and also for NATO as a major military alliance? So the nature of military conflict is expanding. Also look at the civilian side. I'll just give you a few reminders. COVID reminded us that infectious disease has always been a major challenge for science. I sometimes think that we are genetically wired to forget the last pandemic that we had. Climate change leads to a variety of impacts, as we all know, not only migration, but that in turn can bring disease, it can bring food shortages, and so on. So on both the military side and the civil side, the nature of the threat is changing and expanding. The world is interconnected. We know that. The keynote speaker has made that point very clear. So what's the message? You mentioned what's the message. I would say from my own perspective, NATO takes resilience very seriously. I'll expand upon that this afternoon, but NATO is on the case. NATO is a political military alliance. It recognizes it can't do everything, but it has a vital role to play and is very interconnected with other organizations, particularly the European Union, to match this whole of society approach that we all know we need to take on resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Excellent. Andrew, please.
Hi there. So thank you. I'm Dr. Andrew F2 from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre. I work as part of our cyber physical security team. So I work mostly with research in critical national infrastructure. My role has kind of two parts to it. I lead and coordinate our work with academia, kind of looking at the research projects that are going on at different universities, trying to not only set out what they need to be doing, what they need to be working on in terms of core topics, but also then taking the findings back from that research to try and feed into kind of our understanding and then kind of pushing forward to the rest of government in that space. I also lead research into net zero technology. So how do we secure the future that we're looking at? I work on artificial intelligence. So what are we looking at in AI for critical national infrastructure and also in people? So the socio-technical side of security of critical national infrastructure. And so with that role, I spend a lot of time kind of trying to look towards the future, trying to look towards what it means for us to be resilient. And kind of looking at the kind of the question that we were asked, kind of if you take the past from that perspective, a lot of what we used to see was you had critical national infrastructure and it was just separated. You could put a massive fence around it and everyone went, this is just a separate entity. Yes, it might connect into things, but there weren't those network connections that kind of connected through from like the power station into everything else. There might be some phone lines or something like that. Now, slowly but surely, we've eroded that gap between kind of a fenced off place that we had, things like power stations and water plants. And we've actually now got that closer and closer and closer to the rest of our network. So we're seeing kind of the increase in cloud connectivity for this critical national infrastructure. And so we're seeing these routes into these networks that we've never seen before. And then kind of looking to the future, how is that going to change? Well, actually, that line is going to vanish completely. We're already seeing kind of solar panels on houses that are beginning to feed energy back to the grid. We're actually starting to see the whole of the country become critical national infrastructure. I was watching something a couple of days ago about the design of new skyscrapers, where they're actually looking to put hydroelectric cores in there so that actually skyscrapers might become giant batteries. but that's going to change the way that we actually see the country, the way that we see critical national infrastructure, because we're starting to see buildings increasingly part of that critical national infrastructure.
So the experience that we had in COVID-19, where the likes of Zoom and Teams and so on became overnight critical, what was your experience there from the perspective of CNI?
So, yeah, suddenly we were kind of, certainly from the government side, we were conducting all of our activities over Teams. We stopped, at least for that period of time, going out and visiting sites, and we had to actually do everything remotely, and so did so many other people. And so what you were seeing was them beginning to put more and more connectivity, remote connectivity into these sites such that they were able to do their job without having to go onto site. And because that was so successful, no one rolled it back. No one kind of said we're going to go back to always having an engineer that goes out there when someone can just jump on their laptop, enter a few commands and change something over there. But that then changes the dynamic of what you have as the requirements for security in that space.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Brough. I'm a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, which is based in Washington. But as of a few weeks ago, I'm once again based in London. I work on gray zone aggression, which is what you refer to as subthreshold, which is another good term. I don't like the term hybrid very much. I think it means something else, but nevertheless, some people call it hybrid. And this is what I work on, non-military threats. And I also wrote about it in a book called The Defender's Dilemma, because that's what we are in. Sorry about the gloom, but it is a defender's dilemma, because not even NATO does what it can, but it's a military alliance. It's not best positioned to defend us against these threats, but since nobody else is better positioned, then NATO sort of takes care of it, it's taking care of it for the moment. But if we look at the sort of threats that have already, not just threats, the forms of aggression have already taken place in the years I've been working on it. It has gone from a lot of cyber, a lot of disinformation, to a lot of other things as well. For example, this summer, mysterious break-in attempts into Finnish water plants. And what matters is not they were not successful, but that matters less than the fact that they took place, because that instills fear among the public about the reliability of our critical national infrastructure. We have also seen it really stretches across the board in just the past couple of 3 or 4 years. We have also seen, of course, the Houthis. Once again, not a state actor, although they consider themselves a state, but they are not an official state. We have seen them engage in this extremely successful campaign against merchant shipping. We have seen Belarus weaponize migration along the Polish border, which created the extraordinary situation that a Polish border guard was killed on the Polish side of the border, protecting the border. He was killed by somebody who had been brought to the border by the Belarusians. I think he was Afghan or Syrian, but this Polish soldier was killed. And NATO always says we defend every square inch of NATO territory. The Polish soldier was on NATO territory, but we are still not really sure, because it wasn't exactly a military attack. It once again illustrates the dilemma, the defender's dilemma, which we are seeing with these forms of aggression, which as a result are extremely attractive to the countries and entities that engage in them, because we don't know how to respond. But what we do know, and why I think there is joy and hope, is that societal resilience can do a lot to limit the harm that these forms of aggression, these acts can cause in our societies. And what we can do a lot within our Western societies is to build on the improvised measures that we have seen. You mentioned, Avi, the improvised navy that people stood up after the Houston flooding. if we can do things like that, not just when disasters happen, but before they happen, so that they can then spring into action on an organized basis and on a very rapid basis, then we'll be in a very good place. And I think, not to be overdoing the joint hope in the Pollyannish direction, but I think this is actually an opportunity for people to become involved in their communities once again. Societal engagement is decreasing. Well, gray zone aggression, I think, is an opportunity for people to become involved in keeping their communities safe, and as a result, increase societal engagement. And so that is surely a good outcome of a very bad situation that we're seeing at the moment. And not just a bad situation, a bad era. Over.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth. Thank you. So, how are the threats of today different from those of yesterday, and how would they be different tomorrow? Professor Chana.
Thank you, Washington. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Professor Deep Chana. I'm actually on sabbatical leave at the moment from Imperial College, where I specialized in looking at issues to do with security science for a number of years, co-leading the Institute for Security Science and Technology here. I'm on sabbatical leave for the next 3 years to run the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, or DIANA, which is NATO's most recent body, primarily put together to try and see if we cannot engage with some of these difficult issues that we're talking about here, primarily through the use or the encouragement of the development of science and technology. Okay, so onto the problem then a little bit. I think we've touched on some of it with some of the speakers already. Clearly, some of the things that are very different from today compared to tomorrow. The one thing which I think was mentioned in the previous speaker's comments was the issue of connectivity. We are obviously far, far more connected than we have ever been before. I guess you could say that for any age, but I suppose that trend will continue, and we've never seen, I think, such an acceleration of connectivity around the planet as we have seen in the last few decades, primarily because of the technology that we have developed. We're also living in a time, an inflection point, where for the first time in history, our tools and our technologies are taking on responsibility for some of the most critical decisions that we make as human beings. Autonomy, human agency, machine learning, call it what you like. Our machines will make life and death decisions on our behalf in a way that has never happened before. Our tools will collaborate with humanity in a cyber-physical or cybernetic infrastructure envisaged by people like Norbert Wiener at the end of the Second World War, in a way that we have never experienced, probably driving humanity into a different state of evolution at a very rapid pace. And we see an increase of human population. There are extant issues on the pressure this causes on resources. We are fighting right now over basic things: water, food, and energy. And at the base of all of the problems that we face with respect to insecurity and security, I would argue, are these factors. And for the first time, because of this interconnectivity, we have a great deal of transparency of these issues. The haves and the have-nots have a much, much clearer understanding of where they sit on the global picture, and that causes tensions and stress. And that very same interconnectivity also allows us to generate misinformation and disinformation, as Brian was mentioning, causing confusion and sowing mistrust. So we really have quite a number of different things, I would say, today that are different from where we have been tomorrow. And all of this serves to do what a previous commentator was talking about a second ago, which is to blur our very convenient lines that we've managed to create in society around defense, security, resilient, the nation state collective, and the global good or the global society. So really, I think one of the big problems we have to ask ourselves when we talk about this question of resilience or security or defense, whatever you want to call it, is where is the global mutual benefit, and where's the whole of security, the whole of society approach to security and defense? Where do we need to talk with the whole planet in order to solve some of the big problems that Avi was talking about before? Because not one nation, nor any sub-collection of nations is going to solve problems such as climate, such as food insecurity, water insecurity, and some of these very, very big issues. I'll just close then with one other comment. The problem, though, however, is once you get into the current state that we're in, we can start seeing issues and short-term conflicts erupting around us and tensions increasing. The temptation then, therefore, is to start putting out those fires and focusing all of our resources into short-term solutions. And that's a horrible trap, actually, because what that means is rather than looking at the longer term systemic issues, which of course we really need to go after, as more and more things start erupting around us, we are more focused with things that are nearer to us than the things which are actually going to lead to a transformation. And I think it is this dilemma which I would love this conference to discuss in the next few days.
Finish off with joy and hope. So where's the joy and hope?
My joy and hope. I will finish off with one thing here, which I think is, probably the most hopeful and joyous thing for this room. We are sitting at the sort of time of unprecedented scientific and technological development in a number of different fronts. Those technologies that I've just sort of talked about just now, which make some of our issues of insecurity worse, they're the same technologies that can absolutely help us to transform humanity and solve some of those large problems that we're talking about. So it is human intent and endeavor and focus on which direction we would like to go in that is, I would say, the most hopeful and joyous thing that we have at hand right now. And we should grasp that and go after it.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open it to the floor, please. Comments, questions? Wow, amazing. So what we're looking at is setting actually the foundation for the conference in terms of, do we understand the threats of yesterday, today, and where are we heading? Yes, please. Yeah.
Hi there. Yeah, Ian Fox. Just to say, you asked about hope, our ability to forget what we've done in the past. But isn't that what we are actually supposed to do? Otherwise, we wouldn't be sat in this room because we'd all be hiding because something would have eaten us. And we've been in our caves. So I think there's a great opportunity here for us to take things forward in terms of social cohesion and building that cake, baking the original cake around which all of this wonderful infrastructure is going to be wrapped with the nice cherry on top.
Thanks very much, Ian. Any comment on Ian's point from the panel?
I mean, I can jump in. I think, yes. I think it's a point very well made. Of course, if we were to remember with perfect clarity all of the bad things that have happened, we probably wouldn't get up in the morning and wouldn't be able to look into the future. So I think it's a basic function of what we are as human beings to be able to extract the important lessons from the past that might inform how we might do things better in the future, and to, at a certain point, forget certain things. Yes.
Sally at the back.
With the changing threat landscape in Europe, do you have any comments on the preparedness that some of you may be involved in looking at the nuclear resources in Ukraine, the nuclear power plants such as Zaporizhia and Chernobyl and the other nuclear facilities, and the potential for Europe to have either a real radiation release problem or a false narrative to create radiation terror? I'm just wondering from the population's point of view how science is moving to assess this problem.
I think that's for Brian. Dr. Wells.
Thank you. This is a very big worry for NATO, for the IAEA, and the wider international community. Those power stations are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to all sorts of attacks across a broad range of spectrum. And you're absolutely right to point out that any malfunction of one of these installations is likely to be accompanied by a false narrative. So this is a very big worry. The IAEA is regularly inspecting what it can inspect, but its reports do not make for happy reading, if I may say. Thank you.
Yes, please, Elizabeth.
This is where it really matters for our governments to engage in public education and also be transparent about threats. So, of course, we leave the room wide, or the space, the public space wide open to false narratives if our governments don't tell the public about what to do in case there is a nuclear accident in Ukraine, or what to do, how to figure out for yourself whether what you're hearing about a nuclear accident in Ukraine is actually the truth. And this is where some governments have done really excellent work, putting out, producing, and then sending out to the population leaflets that teach them the basics of national security, what to do in case of a crisis. And it's a little bit alarming to receive such a leaflet in the post, but it's a whole lot more alarming to be facing a crisis, to be living through a crisis, knowing nothing about what to do, or indeed how to figure out whether what you're hearing or seeing on social media is actually accurate. So they call various things like if crisis or war comes, and variations on the theme. And this is how to do it. And I remember a few years ago, when I humbly suggested to the UK government they might want to do something like that. They say, oh, no, people will panic. And then a few months later, COVID struck and people panicked, and it was the real deal. So it's better to do it ahead of a crisis. And so now is clearly a very good opportunity to inform the people about the bad things that may happen and how to tell whether what you're hearing is real.
This is part of local community resilience. Yes.
So I just
a quick one
to add something very quickly to that. Yes. Not quite to that scale, but we saw it, earlier this summer, with the outages kind of across the rail network and the airports and things like that. There was a lot of panic because people didn't understand what was happening, what was going on. And so some of the advice that we gave to DSIT after that was to actually start looking at the way that we can build understanding in this space, because we need to have people who can understand a bit more, because otherwise there's blind panic and people just run up to the person in the airport that's just in front of the cancelled signs who doesn't really know what's going on, and they're just barraging them with information, and that person has no capability to give back.
Excellent. By the way, I'm guided by Chris and Paul, so that's how I'm doing it. So next is Chris and then Paul.
Nelson with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So as a representative of the 1% of the government sector that was up there, and perhaps reflecting a bit on the very defense-focused conversation that has been happening so far this morning, interested in your thoughts and perspectives on what are the strongest imperatives in that military-civil connection that we need to be focused on to perhaps bring more of that government-military side to the table into this conversation, because I think it's quite important.
It's an excellent question. I'd like to go to NATO first, because I know something about what NATO is doing in this space. So Dr. Wells, and then Professor Chana to comment on this one.
It's hard to pick out particular priorities across the broad spectrum of resilience. I'll pick one and think of others. It's common ground, I think, that if there were a major biological and chemical attack on our military under any circumstances, we would need the resources of the civil health service to provide sufficient longer-term protection for our forces. Clearly, if there is an incident that is on deployed forces, there will be emergency and immediate treatment that can only be done by the military there, but longer term care would be a matter for the civilian areas. And there is very good linkages in all the nations to allow that to happen. But there are wider things as well. I will come in my talk later today on what are known as NATO's 7 baseline requirements for resilience. The very first of those is continuity of the duly elected democratic government. Clearly, a nation state cannot do much unless that continuity is assured, and NATO does its own contribution to that. We've already heard of disinformation. We've already heard about information to civil society. NATO has a long record of understanding how science can assist in identifying misinformation, in identifying disinformation, and developing counter-narratives to that. That is just one example of where a government that might be vulnerable or being attacked through disinformation can call on the resources, the scientific knowledge to do that. So that's just the very first baseline requirement, and how the civil military can work together.
Yeah, but there's more this afternoon. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Professor Chan, on this one.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I was trying with my comments to be a bit broader than that and actually just show the interplay between several different factors, which we name, you know, as I said, defense or security or resilience, and there's a deep interplay between all of these things. I would suggest, and we talk about this quite a lot in the Diana program, is that we need to really think more, if we're talking about defense, we need to think about this concept of a holistic vision of what defense actually is. And for me, that means understanding that bad things happening, be they natural disasters, wars, things just breaking down in a cascaded way, whatever those things are, these are risks in society, to humanity, right? And we're in the business of risk mitigation and management. So the first thing we need to do is attack the likelihood part of that equation and try and make sure the probability of those things happening is driven down. So our science and technology kind of directives should be towards trying to make sure that likelihood is brought down. The second part is when you're in it, when you're in the conflict, when you're in the bad situation, and there, of course, you want to restore back out of that situation as quickly as possible. And that's the impact part of the risk equation. And so, of course, we need the tools and we need the systems to make sure that the impacts are lessened and that we can quickly restore back into sort of peaceful or steady state conditions as quickly as possible. If you frame this whole problem in those terms, it becomes a whole of society problem. There is no defense versus civilian versus this versus that. It is in all of our interests to think about this, and not just all of our interests in this room, but all of our interests on the planet when you really start expanding it out. And so this is one of the things we talk a lot about.
Thanks, Deep. Dr. Wells would like to make one more point, please.
I'd just like to build on what Deep has said. We think how the situation has changed from yesterday through today and possibly tomorrow. If we wind the clock back, let us say 20 years, there was a very clear civil-military distinction. The armed forces were those people in barracks and they were doing stuff. And there was a civilian society around them. I think that distinction is increasingly blurring. We see civil and military much more interacting together to bring this whole of society. And that's an evolution that we would do well to recognize today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's several hands there, but I would just like to ask a question, if I may, before I come back to the audience, which is that at the end of the day, we're going to need resources to do all of this. So I'd like to ask Elizabeth, please, who pays for all of this? Business modeling, financing, who pays for all of this stuff?
This is the problem. This is not a defense conference, but at defense conferences everywhere at the moment, you hear people saying, oh, Europe should spend 2.5% of GDP on defense. Nobody ever explains where that money should come from, because it needs to come from somewhere else in the government budget. So what is already happening is that we are losing lots of money. Companies are already losing lots of money as a result of gray zone aggression, but also extreme events of different kinds. And they are already... let me just give you an example. NotPetya, which you're all familiar with, which caused losses of around $10 billion to the companies that were affected, and ultimately mostly paid by their insurers, but that was a massive expense. So companies are aware of this risk and in many cases have already lost money as a result. So who pays when it comes to companies that are affected, it's actually in their interest to pay a little bit more to exercise scenarios and not just exercise on their own. They already do that. By the way, since the Army Corps of Engineer officer asked, there's an opportunity here for governments and especially armed forces who are extremely good at writing and conducting exercises to exercise these sort of scenarios with companies. Companies are dying to exercise scenarios like these, but they can't do it in isolation because no crisis of this magnitude hits one company in isolation. So there's an opportunity there. It's not very expensive at all to conduct an exercise, especially if it's a tabletop exercise. Then when it comes to other things you can do, involving wider society is very inexpensive. I think most of us would volunteer for free for the sake of for the benefit to achieve, to help reduce the harm of anything ranging from cyber attacks to extreme weather events, because it's in everybody's interest that we reduce the harm. So that would be inexpensive too. Of course, there are costs associated with this, but the costs of facing the risks without having prepared are far bigger. So both on the corporate side and on the civil society side, there is so much opportunity for governments to invite participants and indeed to educate the public. And if I may just mention another really good example where society has come to the aid of those needing it. New Zealand, after the earthquake, was it 10, 12 years ago, students formed what they call the student army to help victims. And it was improvised after the earthquake, but then it kept going because they realized there are many more contingencies where such aid may be needed. So there's an opportunity to indeed keep going between various extreme weather events and the like, but also to help protect us against gray zone aggression.
Absolutely. So we've got time for 2 questions, and then we are wrapping up. So Paul's person. Lawrence, yes.
Thank you. Lawrence Marzell, working with Washington and the Institute. Sustainability or the race to net zero or 2030, whatever you want to call it, to what extent is it either contributing to the threat matrix or mitigating it?
Yes, Andrew.
So I'll take that one. So currently it's doing a little bit of both, but I think the main thing that certainly myself and my team are trying to do is we're trying to get ahead of the technology that is being put in place for achieving our net zero objectives. So we're trying to look at things like the massive growth in the number of wind farms that we've got, and actually looking at the architecture of those environments, of those systems, to try and actually help shape the way that we develop them. And we're trying to do this kind of across multiple different sectors and multiple different technologies, because the understanding that we have is that 2050, the technological landscape is going to be vastly different. Every sector is being affected by the drive towards net zero. Things like the cement industry is going through massive processes to try and decarbonize their production processes because they're currently very carbon intensive. And so it's looking at that and then looking at who are going to be the suppliers in that, trying to work with them to try and improve their security so that, come the time that these technologies are really in place and they're kind of the backbone of what we're looking at, we have done our best to help secure them. And so currently we're going through a little bit of turmoil where we're trying to put some of those things in place and we haven't got the security exactly right, but that is kind of us on that journey towards a secure 2050.
Yeah, so I've been given signs from all over the room to wrap up. So I'm going to do that. But before I say cheerio for now, I'm going to give the panel members strictly 30 seconds each, starting with Andrew coming this way, to give us some key takeaways. Obviously, we still have a day, 2 days to go, but what are the key takeaways in summary before we close this panel? Andrew,
so
30 seconds.
So reflecting on joy and hope, I think the main thing is that we're all here, we're all engaged in this. We've not buried our heads in the sand. And so all of the conversations, all of the discussions, technical, socio-technical, environmental, are going to be so important to actually reaching that sustainable kind of resilient society. 25
seconds, well done. Elizabeth.
I'll beat that. It's so important to remember that there are many people out there, companies, individuals, innovating, coming up with new solutions, and a lot of it is happening in the private sector. So that's as a think tanker, I sometimes regret that the think tank world isn't more innovative when it comes to coming with presenting new ideas. But the good thing is that these ideas do exist, they are being presented, and if we can if conferences like these can function as a hub for these ideas to be presented and heard, then we are in a very good place.
20 seconds, well done. Thank you. Professor Chan.
Yeah, I think we concentrated a lot on sort of human-driven events, anthropogenic things. I think we shouldn't forget that resilience is also about how just complexity on its own can lead to failures that maybe cascade and this sort of thing. I would just leave with what I said before in terms of the hope that is there, that if we direct our efforts and human beings can think about how they can solve these problems more than they can think about how to amplify them, then I think the future is actually very, very positive for what we might be able to achieve.
The future is orange. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Wells.
Thank you. I should be short. Well, I am short. So what it strikes me is we have a room of leaders all thinking in the same direction. I think the connections forged today really are a source of joy and hope. Thank you very much.
Joy and hope. Thanks, Dr. Wells. Please join me in thanking panel members. I think tea is served or something. Sorry, a coffee. Thank you very much. See you shortly. Thanks. Great job. Thank you.
Behind schedule, but if we could have you back by 10 past, please, so we can try and finish roughly on time for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.
del laboratorio CyberSec. Adesso c'è Armando, Alessandro Armando, come nuovo direttore, iniziato da un mesetto. Un po' più visibile.
If you're waiting for the attack, any kind of attack to happen, then you are already dead. You just don't know it yet. So it's 80% of the efforts, if not 90%, preparedness and proactive measures in a way to find where the holes, where the breaches, where the gaps, and close them or minimize them. Nothing hermetic in cyber. Second, no one can deal with any kind of attack by himself. So we need to find how we can rely and partner and work with others. The good news, the good guys are much better in a community and partnership than the bad guys.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here and welcome to our second session. I hope we will have an enlightening discussions and you know, at least the most likely to make the question if your coffee machine is plotting against you or not. So I will start and let's start. Let me talk a little bit about the challenge, actually. What is the challenge and what we are talking about? So here is the reality, actually. We face, according to the recent reports, about 40% of cyber attacks in 2023. And if I'm taking this year, so it continues, the trend continues, and even is higher. This is about 28% increase from the previous year. And in fact, the energy sector alone has seen 74% of rise in cyber attacks globally over the last 2 years. Think about it, that in the past, if you wanted to disrupt a nation power grid, you need an army, tanks, and good old-fashioned invasion plan. Today, you might just need a laptop, a clever code, and some kind of Wi-Fi or communication. It's enough. But despite all those doomsday scenarios, we are also here to discuss solutions, the exciting innovations that are helping us to build a resilient infrastructure that can withstand the recovery from the even anticipated cyber threats. Lucky for us, we have an amazing panel. We gather a group of experts who are not only leading the charge, but also rewriting the rules of the game. And I will let you present yourself shortly when you start to speak, but short presentation from myself, Massimo Raveno. Nice to meet you. When you start speaking, you will present introduce yourself. Okay. From Cybersecurity Italy Foundation, as is written on the slide, who's seen more cyber battles than most people have held dinners. Eddie Tizzi, VP at Alstom, that is ensuring the rail system keep running, even when cyber threats try to derail them. Hi. Professor Ernesto Damiani, whose work in Khalifa University is bridging the gap between academia and industry. And Radek Hartmann, last but not least, who is navigating the unique challenges of Europe power grids through his role in CEPS, a distribution company in Czech Republic, and NTSOE of European Committee. So, welcome. Before we start, just some shocking statistics. 10.5 trillion is the number, the projected global cost of cybercrime in 2025. And critical infrastructure are some of the prime targets. Over 75% of industrial control system, ICS, in critical infrastructure faced malware attacks in the last year alone. A recent survey showed that 54% of critical infrastructure organizations have reported cyber attacks that have caused operational disruption. So fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be fascinating, I hope, a fascinating ride to cyber landscape of rails, national grids, and unseen battlefields that shape the world. So let's start. And my first question, and if I am a little bit aggressive, don't be afraid, that's answer. We will start with critical infrastructure resilience, and the question will actually go for all of you. So I start with critical infrastructure. You know, I'm feeling I'm long time in cyber defense and everything for a very long time. And I'm feeling like we are investing, but the trend of rising of compromises and attacks is rising all the time. So I have a simple question. Are we building fortress or just card houses? Please, Radek.
Thank you very much. So should I say something about myself?
Yeah, sure.
As Yossi said, thank you very much. I'm coming from Czech Republic, maybe another provocative. The map was not right, yeah? My country was not mentioned. And I would like you to take it as a way that the battlefield is really shifting towards Central and Eastern Europe. So please be aware, either we will fight with you or without you. It will be so. So when it comes to the investment, I think, or my view is a bit different. It's always the question where to take the money off, and also we discuss it whether it's worth. I feel that we simply do the puzzle of balancing 3 or 4 main areas or domains where to invest. Security, freedom, of course, wealth, and maybe environment. And it won't be always clear what should prevail, and it very much depends on the values we share and what we really are after. I still believe that there could be find a balance, so it's definitely shared. And to be honest, I even think that when it comes to marketing money, it's always said like 50% you don't know whether you spend worth or not. In security defense, I think 100% is spent very well, because it's not only what you protect, but also what signs you give to people, what education you support, what smart thoughts about the ways of doing things around. So in my eyes, it's definitely worth spending any single money in security.
Thank you. So I will sharpen my question a little bit, if you allow me, so, and then we continue. So can critical infrastructure defenses withstand today's threats, or are just like fancy doorstops? Massimo.
Great, thank you. It's really glad to be here, really happy to be here. Well, actually, just a few words about me. After 15 years in defense, in silent defense related to cybersecurity, and 5 years in Prime Minister office as cybersecurity advisor, I felt I was comfortable in starting as head of cybersecurity in one of the largest energy and water company. In fact, I wasn't, definitely. And there was a first moment when I saw the difference between the perspective from public sector to private sector in managing critical infrastructure in cybersecurity. And then we and then I started to study again, well, to answer the question, the issue I see is who decided to spend in cybersecurity in a national landscape. I mean, in Italy, there is a very difference between the public sector and the private sector, even if we are talking managing critical infrastructures. And this, I think, is the biggest issue we have in our nation. So shifting between public and private sector, building this strong partnership between public and private could help both the public sector to better understand what the private needs in better managing critical infrastructure, in better spending about securing in essential services, in securing essential services, and private sector in speaking with the public institutions to grow up together, to grow a culture together, a security culture together. So please, over.
Okay, thank you. I have to admit that, you know, I told Radek before that actually it's a big advantage to be on a panel and not to be the moderator, because never mind what the moderator asks, you are saying whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you know, I would like to hear, and from the following honorable members, actually, are we ready or are we able to compete? So please, Eddie.
No, I try to answer. So my name is Eddie. I'm coming from a company called Alstom. We build a railway. It's a bit everywhere. So I can give you the perspective from a manufacturer of products which are part of critical infrastructure. One of the questions was, what has changed between yesterday and today? And are we investing the money wisely? What has changed? A lot of things has changed, but one of the key things that I'm seeing is how easy it is to become an expert. A couple of years ago, if you wanted to know what is a train or a plane, you had to learn in school during years. Today, you go on Google, Wikipedia, YouTube, you have hundreds of videos explaining you in detail how it works and okay, how you can, quote unquote, attack it. So for me, one of the main difficulty in our job is now that the threat is coming from everywhere, and it's very easy for everyone, small organization to big state, to become efficient. And I can tell you, if you go, you tap ETCS on your Google, you will have the whole explanation of how the European train control system is working, including the management of the security keys and so on. So are we investing our money wisely? Yes, if we invest on people. If we build fences, it is useless. The day you build your fence, the day after, your fence is almost useless. So if we only try to build new products, new solutions, it will not be something that is sustainable. If we want to sustain, we need to bet on people. And that's the second lesson learned. It is the same thing that is making the threat changing, meaning the easy access to information, to knowledge, is also the same thing that will help us to save our life. Because we can train our people, we can train everyone. Everyone can be one of the, I would say, one of the elements of this big net for our protection.
Thank you. So, Professor Damiani, maybe you will save the situation, please.
No, I'm sorry, I can't. But anyway, I will say a couple of words on myself. Well, my background, of course, I've been working in cybersecurity, especially in the European projects. I was in the steering committee of Concordia, Sparta, those big projects that were funded by the European Commission. But I'm not here as a representative of my background in those projects. Although I still am a professor at the University of Milan, I'm still the president of the consortium of the Italian universities dealing with, computer science and computer technology. But I'm here as a representative of the center that I created in the Middle East, the Khalifa University in the UAE. It's called Cyber Physical Systems, and we work specifically on cyber physical systems and their security. This is in cooperation with industry. That's why you kindly said that I try to build a bridge. Of course, bridges. But let me say one word about this. The situation has changed. It was already hard before, being able to try to guarantee any security properties based, we had this meet in the Academia of Security by Design. So we were trying to show compositionally that if you put the right controls, in the end you would achieve a certain degree of a certain security property. This is still interesting as a way to teach people, but the reality is that in a regionalized world, where the supply chains are no longer under your control, and the effort that has been done in order to at least certify the supply chains for the European products, it shows that this simply is a battle that's very difficult to win a priori. You cannot do certification and verification first and then deployment later. You must be there in the trenches. So we cannot build even if we tried to build a Maginot Line, it will be a doomed effort for this reason mostly, because we don't control the supply chains. And well, I can mention a few examples if you want, but I stop here because I'm sure that my colleagues also have some examples in mind.
Okay, thank you. I hope that you understand I'm joking, and thank you for excellent answers. But let's try additional subject of cyber threats landscape. Okay, so I'm asking, evolving faster, is the landscape evolving faster than your software and policy updates of cyber defense and cyber resilience? Project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Excellent.
Good answer. Good answer.
Definitely.
Can you elaborate?
Definitely. The speed is enormous, and the only what it reminds me is actually remember that there is no limit. Actually, there is no border. There is no resources limit, no finance limit. Our adversaries can do actually anything. And even worse, they can do it decentrally. So you don't know where they are coming from. So it changes tremendously that you can't be sure. And even worse, and then I stop, you actually don't know for what you must be ready, because each attack is new one, coming with new techniques, with a situation that you never faced. So it's changing rapidly, and you must be ready for something that you didn't experience in the past.
Marcin?
Well, yes, absolutely. And this speed, I think, is both horizontal and vertical. Let me explain. Smart grids in energy sector started in late 90s, at least in Italy. Smart grids in water sector are starting right now. So we have a completely different situation in protecting these systems, because of course security is an added layer to previous smart grid in energy sector, but in water sector we could start with a security by design approach. So managing all this complexity means that the speed, both from threats and from technological development, is not linear, because is related to the specific environment. So while conducting security operations, such as defensive security operations, we have all this complexity managed together. And if we think about the introduction of AI, that actually nowadays seems to be the answer of all of questions, we see that this complexity grows up more and more. Every vendor, every security vendor offers some kind of AI integration or AI capabilities inside every technology. So my landscape is it's completely out of control. Not only about the supply chain, but inside my security operations. So we need to focus to a new governance and reduce this complexity. And in this case, I mean, we are talking about a resilient and renewable and a sustainable approach to cybersecurity, to security could be a really help. Because you could shift, we could turn the traditional paradigm where the security is an added layer to shifting to a new one where we keep just the essential security layer without losing any security posture.
So let me just add some or rephrase some question. Are our risk assessment techniques proper techniques? So you know, I think the biggest risk is actually that we have so many risk models and risk techniques that maybe this is the biggest risk.
I think that's
what is the right one?
We shall not forget why we are doing that. I mean, we don't do cyber for cyber. We don't do protection for protection. We don't do defense for defense. We do that because at the beginning, someone was talking about joy and happiness. We would like to keep our society with joy and happiness. So what we need to do is to make sure that we are resilient. If the question is, do we have the right risk assessment method? The answer is, it depends the way you use it. We have hundreds of methods. What we need to make sure that our job is to make protection somewhere. Let's make sure that the somewhere can continue to do whatever it's doing. If I am in charge of protecting a train, going from A to B with goods or people, my job is to make sure that it will continue to go from A to B, whatever the incident. And most of the incidents that I will have to face will be unpredictable because the one that I can predict, I already act to avoid them to arrive or I am protected. So my job is to make sure that the team has understood that they will have to face something which is unknown. And it's fact of life. You don't prepare yourself to fight only things that you know, because if not, you will lose. You need to prepare yourself to react in front of things that you don't know. And that is where the difficulty is that you don't know what will happen. You don't know exactly what will happen. And all the debate will be how you react to that. So you work on your team, you work on your defense. Am I still able to run? Am I still able to distribute the water? This is the job that you have to protect. And then, if this is your target, you will quickly understand, is my risk assessment methodology good? Am I going in the detail of the detail? Or I am able to step back a little bit to understand that what I want to protect, my key assets and my crown jewels, are the ones which are in the center of my discussion. If it is the case, your risk assessment methodology is good. If you end up with 2,800 risk, maybe your method is not very good.
Thank you. Professor Amani?
Well, what I can add, because I think that there is a very important point here. What I can add about this is the notion that, of course, moving towards the new technology that's coming in, pervasive AI deployment, stuff like that, we are going to move into a situation in which what we tried to do in traditional security, which was basically the strong defense line, secure booting. Let me give you one example in which I wanted to be sure that the software that I had executing in a certain position was exactly the one that I was originally signed, and I could be sure of some properties that it had. Okay, that is certainly doable easily with some library that implements an algorithm of some sort. If I'm booting up an LLM, which has been tuned by a certain company and which has been trained by another, I have absolutely no way to, even if I try to do testing a priori, it's very difficult. What I need to do is monitoring and elastic defense. And elastic defense, I like very much the notion that resilience and elastic defense are two very close related concepts. I need to be able to identify. In the end, I'm not getting a medal if I am kicking out the enemy immediately. I'm getting a medal if I can limit the damage and I can be back online in a short time and with the minimum amount of damage, as I was saying. So this is the notion that we can pursue, is this notion of being resilient. So a priori, I'm going to design not the best possible line of defense, but the line of defense that will allow me to be back operationally with the minimum damage. Otherwise, frankly speaking, I think it's an illusion. And in this situation, especially, in which the different parts will be bought and composed without full control on the part of the user organizations.
Allow me just to ask a very focused and specific question about cyber insurance. You know, I'm familiar with a lot of organizations, and actually they say, we have cyber insurance, we are okay, everything is okay. So I'm sure that somebody actually gained a lot of advantage for having cyber insurance, many the cyber insurance companies. But is cyber insurance, is it a parachute or just a bunch of paperwork that we are doing? You know, actually, even if I'm reading the last report of Cyber Management Alliance, it indicates that at least 30% of cyber liability insurance claims are rejected. Why? Because at the end of the day, when they are inspecting it, nobody stands behind the conditions. So just short before we move to next issue.
I'm sorry if I destroy someone's business, but this is not my personal thing about insurance. It doesn't help me. If it happens, then any insurance simply doesn't solve my
So you are not the insurance company?
Definitely not. At the same time, we have nice contracts, so supplier is guilty for everything, so it's not my approach. So this is not what we based our defense on, not at all, because at the end of the day, we are the only ones who are responsible. We just can speak whether the consequences, how far the consequences go beyond our company or beyond our security. So this is not what I propose, and maybe based on what you said, we should really create maybe the positive example of what we should do. We now just complain how difficult it is, and I feel that what is really the fundamental part of our work, or it should be, it's what was also taught by my predecessor, it's a speed decision-making process. I'm not sure if you realize, but we developed nice legal bureaucratical scheme of legal constraints where it's more or less impossible to make any decision anytime. And I just give you an example. There are new network codes, and I'm pro-European, yeah, coming from European Union, which that has derogation of 6 years. Just imagine what the world was 6 years ago and what will be here in 6 years' time. So I feel that we need somehow change into more flexible, the legal framework we are in, and establish the decision-making process that it's actually based on chaos, because you never know that you make a decision based on something that is reliable. And you know, I'm from electricity business, that the worst that you can do is to make any frequency justification based on the wrong figures that you receive.
Somebody wants to talk about
I just want to say, I can't resist saying one thing, Steve, professorial style, so don't take me as an insurance company. But I want to say that's the difference. The frequentistic probability is that. Frequentistic probability has been used by insurance company for a long time. And basically the notion is that the risk depends from not from the severity, from the probability side, on the events that happened in the past. And so how many of those events happened in the past? And basically, the more that happened in the past, the higher the probability that, in a sense, I would estimate the probability of the future based on the frequency. And this is something that we discovered that, especially in cybersecurity, but not only, because another thing is climate change-related things in which, of course, if you try to, you would go bankrupt if you try to insure someone based on the frequency of events in the past. Same thing here. So the notion is that cyber insurance wants to develop a model in which the probability part is based on some confidence, and the confidence depending on conditions, like, for example, the defenses that you have. Okay, good luck. Good luck. But of course, some regulations, regulatory frameworks might impose this type of insurance, because it is basically a way in order to balance the potential damage that you may occur. In the end, the insurer guy will reinsure himself with the government agency, and that happens all the time when the insurer doesn't really know how to estimate the confidence. They are reinsured back one step backward. I see people nodding because, yeah.
If I may, Yoshi, there is two elements in my toolbox, I will say, which are laws and insurance. I don't really believe that they will protect me, quote unquote. The point is that when you want to onboard your decision-making guys, your executive committee, your governments, unfortunately, they believe a lot in that. So if you can take your insurance or not, if you will be compliant to the law. So when you try to build your defense to protect something, you need to make sure that everyone will be part of it. And for some people, you will speak with techniques, with tactics, with procedures, with tools. And some other people, unfortunately, they will listen if you say to them, oh, by the way, you will not be able to insure yourself anymore, so you will have to do something. You will not be able to be compliant to the law if you don't do something. So law and insurance, if we are on the defense side, in a company, in a city, in a country, you cannot rely on them to protect you because it's really foolish. But you can rely on them to help you to spread the news and to explain to others what they have to do, to onboard people and make them part of the game. But you need to be realistic that your insurance is not protecting you against the next attack. Make it clear.
Well, I will start sharing a personal experience, because in 2020, the board of the company asked for an insurance, a cyber insurance, and we signed. And we confirmed till 2023. In 2023, we were covered, and we suffered a massive cyber attack coming from, well, it was a nation-sponsored cyber attack, hitting both our energy and water systems. And of course, after everything, well, we managed, we recovered, and we had a confrontation with the insurance company. And okay, so we had a contract, so everything was set up, everything was clear, the conditions were clear. Oh, no, I'm sorry, no attack nation state, nation sponsored are covered. Okay, so unless you would be able to prove that was a nation-sponsored attack. Okay, I would ask to anybody, starting from the National Cybersecurity Agency from Italy, to prove with an insurance company that a cyber attack was coming directly from a nation, mostly from Eastern Europe. So, no, definitely I'm not an insurance guy.
Okay, so first of all, it was an amazing question and answer because it's the first time that 4 people agree with each other. So yeah, we reached the goal. So let's talk a little bit in the same context about international cooperation. So global cooperation, we hear about it a lot. That's a key point. So are we really on the same team or just sharing memes?
The second is true. Yeah, it's really a shame. And I can tell you that I see it in every day that I deal with the challenges, because it's really strange. Maybe it's understandable that in a situation when there is some crisis, everyone focuses just on himself, on the country, but they kind of diminish or undermine that there could be really the consequences to the others, and at the same time that the others can help you. So I feel that it's really a shame, even supported by the fact that we look at the European map, you know, we are like, how many, 40 countries, so it's quite difficult to find really the ground, despite Europe wanted through European Union, it was not successful, and I am also acting as the chair of Information and Communication Technologies of ENTSO-E, which is Electrical Transmission System Operators Agency, where National Grid unfortunately left after Brexit, and I hope that it might soon join. It's really very difficult. It starts with the legal arrangement. It starts with way how you classify information, because one country doesn't allow to release the information to the others. Then it starts with a different level of the processes they have. So I think that this is the only way to the future, and I would like to convince you this is the way for you, but it's really hard. It's really hard, and I would appreciate any thoughts, how you feel it could be done. The only what I come up was the values. Maybe it's too general, maybe too vague, but we really should clarify the values we share, and then based on the values, we'll find the common ground. And I came to that point because I even feel that's a bit personal and emotional. We lost discussion about the values. Yeah. Do you know what is the value of your country? What is the value of Europe? What is the value of your party? I really don't.
Well, it's I'm really glad that you mentioned the value, because every risk management theory or strategy is based on value, on a clear perspective of who you are, who you want to be, and the core value that you want to protect, and then we can start talking about protection, defense layers, and so on. And totally agree with it, with you. I mean, the situation about partnerships and collaborations across EU, it's basically the same we are facing inside Italy. So the problems is starting from the national level, and I mean, and to the EU level, but it's.
Okay, so just Anna raised the 5 minutes sign. So according to the previous panel and in Imperial College time scale, we have about 25 minutes, additional minutes.
We call it academic quota.
Don't worry, we will finish soon. So please.
So are we the same team? No question.
Yeah, no,
the answer is no. As simple as that. We are seated on very complex supply chain. We are seated on very complex contractual schemes. So forget about the one team, unless you find the one jersey. Because it's the only way to have a team is to have people having the one jersey at one point in time. The lesson learned over the last couple of years is that The time is changing. So you can be in a team and then you move to another team. That's the reality. And again, resilience is important. You need to be ready to protect what you believe is key for you, your value, your family, whatever. So once you have defined that, then you define the team, and not the contrary. And that helps a lot, because if you know for what you are fighting, it's much more simple. If you start to put people together and say you have to fight, it will never happen. If they fight for something, they have something to protect, then you can talk about the team.
Well, I don't want to repeat what the others have said. I entirely agree. I would like just to focus for 1 second on what we can do, and what we can do is to enlarge the talent pool. I mean, apart from everything, apart from the lack of, collaboration, and having been in those large European projects, I can tell you that I think I've seen them all, these type of things. I mean, companies that would be in the project, and then in the end, they wouldn't have the permission of the regulatory authority of the country to share the information that they were supposed contractually. So we had this, okay, I don't want to enter into this because you already made the picture, but what we can do together is to improve our talent pool. We are behind. Sorry, a university guy is speaking here, so in Italian we say Cicero pro domo tua, meaning that I'm the orator for my own, but really, I think that what's important, and all the coordination efforts that we want to make, rely on the assumption that we have enough resources in terms of the capabilities. And we cannot just hire from outside. This must be a European adventure in the educational and in the training and in the awareness. These three things we can do. So I think that we should continue on those.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very important, actually, even though in many conferences I'm participating on discussion, I would say we are just swapping ransomware stories and not cooperating. This is the situation, but I think our panel is example of cooperation. Czech Republic, Italy, France, UAE, Israel. I think it's amazing. We open for 2-3 questions from the audience if there are some. So please.
Okay, thank you. Amos Lasker. We are here in the Resilient Renewable Society. So is renewable energy more risky or less risky than the traditional vertical one?
Radek.
I a bit touched it in my previous answer. I feel that the life is not black and white, and it's more about balancing of wealth, security, freedom, and environment. And I believe that the answer to this is in our values, and depends what your values are. If your values are more on security, then of course you move it into that. If it's more environment, you move it further. So generally, of course, the renewables brought new risks and new situations, but it's normal, any technology brings risk. Anything that you invent is a new one. So I don't see it. And of course, I saw renewables as the great contribution to our, and not only environmental friendly, but also to our wealth system. I am absolutely sure. So yes, but no more than any other new technologies and new adoptive innovation that we have around us.
If I may, just focus one point. If we focus on new technology in a more comprehensive and integrated approach, I think that it would be much more helpful instead of just thinking about security as a single layer, not directly integrated with the new technology and the new approach. So, for example, the new world, the new infrastructure, energy infrastructure related to the BESS, so the battery energy systems, storage systems, are much more similar to data centers than batteries. We have energy management systems, new energy management systems, platforms performing both energy control and security controls. So this could be, of course, a change in terms of technology perspective, in security perspective, in sustainability and sustainability perspective.
I realized one more thing, sorry, I forgot. I traveled to Warsaw where I meet my Ukrainian friends. In Ukraine, it's a typical example where it would really help because their dependency on only a few nuclear power plants make them vulnerable. They are desperate to introduce much more renewables not to be so vulnerable.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry. Hi, thanks. So just coming back to the question about insurance. So Professor Damiani's point about risk and traditional insurance claims being based on an assessment of likelihood for pricing premiums. Is there a potential solution to that economic problem, which is that we could use something like a measure of resilience as an impact reduction, which is the other half of risk, as a kind of model for the future? And I guess the sort of second part of that question is, if we go down that road, is that possible? I know there's a talk later about measuring resilience, but coming back to the point about emergent and unpredictable behavior of AI-based applications, is that going to be a problem?
Yeah. I can only say this. In order to be usable in risk models, the measure of confidence, which of course are all of the same mathematical family, need to have some metric property. At the moment, resilience, we are not yet in the position to put resilience into risk models that can be used, for example, to compute how much a premium of an insurance should be. But certainly, I recognize several sitting in this room that would be ready to invest in that direction. It's not easy. It's like trying to use carbon equivalent for sustainability. Same thing, you have a measure, you have a number, but the number doesn't have the metric properties. If you will go bankrupt if you try to make a predictive model based on that number. Same thing for resilience. We have some proposals, we have papers, we have people, but at the moment we are not ready to move resilience as the basis of insurance models. Certainly, I hope to be able to see this in the future.
Big applause to our panel. Thank you very much.
Take a picture. Oh.